Hello guys, welcome back and welcome to the donor car for the latest project. This is the remains of a Nissan Leaf. It wasn't actually crashed. There was no real damage to the car when I got it, but it does not have a high voltage battery. The previous owner took the high voltage battery out of this car for his home power wall or whatever it is. I think he's trying to run his house off grid, something like that. So you can see I've made a start already to taking the front off. Bonnet, bumper, various bits and pieces from the front crash structure are all removed. At the moment I haven't taken anything off other than maybe there was a coolant bottle here. That's about the only thing I've done is remove the coolant from the motor. But yes, believe it or not, there is a coolant radiator in a Nissan Leaf. One of these is for the aircon and the other one is to cool the coolant that goes through the motor. It doesn't actually, I don't know why Nissan decided not to keep the battery cool, but anyway, that was their decision. But this is what a Nissan Leaf looks like when you take the front bumper off and crash structure and bits and pieces and stick them on the roof. This is what you get. The plan here is to remove the inverter and I think that's the inverter, I think that's the motor, and down below then would be the transmission. Remove the inverter, transmission, motor, etc. and plug them into my Land Rover Freelander. The Freelander is a scrappy piece of rubbish car, absolutely worthless car, because basically, well, it's a bit of a wreck. A long story, but anyway, it's not worth anything. So I plan to use it as a test mule, basically, is as good a way of putting it as any. Test mule to figure out whether or not I can do it, figure out how to get everything into the car, and then at some stage find a nice clean Freelander and then transfer everything from one to the other. At least that's the current plan. As you can see, the bonnet, I don't know if you can see it or not there, but the bonnet is in the back seat. Front bumper is on the roof, crash structure on the roof, lights, all of that. I'm hoping to sell a lot of those and get a good part of my money back. I didn't have to pay that much for this car because it didn't have a battery and therefore wasn't of much use to anybody. And so, in truth, I actually got the entire car for less than some people are selling. Oops, sorry, I just zoomed in. I got the entire car for less than some people are selling the motor and transmission for. So that was a bit of a bargain, and if I can sell some of the other parts to get some money back, that's even better. So I shall now take you out and show you the Freelander. There's second mug of the day. Freelander is here. And if you're wondering why it's worthless, that's part of the problem. And that. And well, basically it's an old piece of junk. As you can see, I've already actually been working at this, trying to get the canned messages out of it, which I think I've been able to do. Pretty much figured out what all different CAN signals are going on inside this car. But that's the car that's going to be the test mule. Yeah, the roof line is the paint's peeling off the roof, is peeling off the bonnet. Obviously at some stage in its life this car's had a nasty bang and a very nasty one if the roof is involved. And I have no interest in spending the time or money trying to respray all that when the rest of the car isn't that great anyway. So this is basically worthless. I couldn't sell it for anything much anyway, so I might as well just use it to play with. So that's what we're at. That's what we're doing with this. And this is the donor car, which is going to give me my parts, I hope. And all I have to do is figure out a battery for the Freelander, figure out how to fit it, figure out how to make it go, and figure out how to make it stop. There's all sorts of things you have to bear in mind doing a conversion like this, and I suspect I only know the half of it, or the quarter of it, of what I really need to do. But hopefully it'll be a fun project. I've already had lots of fun taking this thing apart. Less said about that the better. Even just taking the bumper off this thing is an absolute pain. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and strip the rest of it down. Get the drivetrain out of it. And we'll take it from there. So I know it doesn't look a whole lot different, but I have spent a few more hours getting rid of more coolant pipes and disconnecting electrical cables and whatever, and getting a few more bits and pieces out of the way. So I'm hoping that in another couple of hours we'll be ready to lift the motor out, which is a problem of course, because I loaned my engine hoist to a mate about 2 years ago and haven't seen it since, so I'll have to go and chase that up. But yep, we're getting there, getting a bit more done, and I'll come back when we're at the stage when we're ready to hoist the motor out. I'm having a right bollock of a job getting this inverter separated from the motor, and I think it's because the connection goes, where is it, into there, and I think that whole thing, I don't think that's just a connector. I think those cables just go in and bolt onto the motor itself. At least I think that's what's happening. There's the connection on the bottom of the, if I can light that up, the bottom of the inverter, and that's the connection going into the motor. And I think at this point we're just going to have to keep the motor and the inverter together. I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to do a little bit of research into that. But as you can see, I've got a lot of other stuff out of the way. The inverter is actually loosened now, separated. So I think I'm going to have to take this beam out, the support beam, get that out of the way. It's just cut 2 bolts, hold that on, and that will be the inverter free. So then I think that's what will happen. That'll be the inverter free, and then it'll be a matter of lifting the whole thing out together. But before I can do that, I need to get the motor, the drive shaft out of the transmission, get that all separated, because I can't lift the motor and transmission out if they're still attached to the wheels. So I guess that's going to be the next step. There's no point in taking this bar out at this stage because it's just not going to achieve anything. And I'm assuming that that big thing in the back is the charger. I'm not terribly sure, but I'll tell you what, there's a lot of coolant pipes flowing through this. A serious number of them. I've been disconnecting coolant pipes all day. Doing my head in. But anyway, we're getting there. Slowly but surely, we're just a little bit at a time. I don't want to damage anything, and I don't want to damage the car because I'm hoping to sell the car, the shell, when I'm finished. So anyway, yeah, that's. I'm wondering, would it be possible to take out the subframe, just drop the whole subframe, motor and everything together, just straight down, and keep it attached to the wheels? Probably not. Not sure about that. Anyway, this is what the inside of a Nissan Leaf, a Gen 1 Nissan Leaf looks like. The Gen 2 Nissan Leaf had the inverter and the motor were physically bolted together, and they had a slightly different motor. This motor is an, if you can see that, EM61, and I think the newer motors were EM57 or something like that. I can't remember now exactly what the number was for the newer ones, but it wasn't 61. So, not very exciting, but just basically picking this thing apart bit by bit. Very slow work. But it's slow because I'm trying to be careful to not damage anything. It's also slow because I don't know how a lot of the connectors come apart. There's about 20 different styles of connector, electrical connector, and each one of them comes apart in a different way. And sometimes you have it released, but it's just being sticky, and sometimes you haven't got it released, and it's not just being sticky, it's actually not released yet. So it's trying to figure out which of the two is the reason why the connector isn't coming out. This one here was a right royal pig. You can't even see it very well, but big beast of a connector. Managed to get it apart, and now I'm not sure that I needed to, but anyway. Like I say, I have no idea how this is going to go back together again. Oh well, we'll figure out something. So after a great deal of huffing and puffing and swearing and banging my head off this corner at least, and this one, at least 5 times, I think I have the whole thing out. What I had to do was remove the bolt. Well, actually the bolt at the very back of the subframe had already been removed. I don't know if you can see that or not there. You see the little round thing? That just seemed to be jammed up into the receptacle that it was into, and the same on the other side, although thankfully one of them had already come loose for me. So basically this whole thing was hanging off one bolt at the front and another bolt at the other side, and those things sort of just jammed in. I think the guy that took the battery out didn't realise that, but that doesn't really matter. We're okay. The other thing I had to do was release the or is it, you can see it there, the steering column. It's just one bolt in the driver's footwell, and the steering column pulled out. I also released the wishbone, lower steering arm, whatever you want to call it. It was bolted into the subframe. Did that on both sides, and track rod end, and what do you call it? balancing stabilizer bar, whatever you call it. So that was all disconnected. Yep, there's a lot of cursing went on over that. And now what I've got is I have the inverter still mounted up here, so I'm going to have to now unbolt this cross member that goes right across. Set the inverter down on top of the motor and set the whole thing down on the ground. At the moment I have them sitting on 4 axle stands. Thankfully I had 4, because I'm using another 2 to hold the car up. But yes, a complete bollock of a job, but we're getting there. We're getting this thing out. I just need to be, I just spotted a hose that's being over tightened, although I think that's just hanging down, so I can, there you go. If you look in there, there was a hose was bending. It looks like it's been trapped, so I'll try and get that out. I knew there was always going to be something that was going to be catching when I lowered this thing down, but so far so good. I'll go a bit further, and hopefully the next time you see this it will be on the floor with the inverter sitting on top of it. Slight change of plan. I suddenly realised that this beam goes down here and along here and gets bolted in back here and goes long and up here and across the back, and the beam goes right round. It's far bigger than I thought, and it was more involved than I thought to remove it, so I changed my mind and disconnected the cables from the inverter. As you can see, that went up there, and if you can see it in there, I don't know if you can see them or not, they're not coming up. You can just about see them inside. The these bars come right up to here and are fastened using standard 13mm bolts. So got those out. So now the motor and drivetrain are separated from the inverter, and so I can go ahead and drop the rest of the subframe down. So let's get that done. Right, well, now that I've released the obligatory earth cable and hose that was still attached, and put down some blue towels to catch the transmission fluid that's just poured all over my garage floor, it's out. We're free as a bird. And the inverter's very little holding it as well, so whew. It's going somewhere. I'm not entirely sure where it's going, but it's going somewhere, and we have it out of the car. That's the main thing. Whew. So now to throw it into the other car. Sure, it'll be simple. It'll be much easier to put in the other car than it is to take out of this one, won't it? Well, we'll see about that. I don't know if I will end up using that steering rack or not. Probably not. But it's there. In fact, the entire car was in very, very good nick. It seems a bit of a shame that the guy pinched the battery out of it and basically left it worthless, but hey ho, his folly was my gain. And now I've got motor, transmission, inverter, and down the back somewhere is the charger, plus all the hoses, cables, pumps, and all these bits and pieces that I would never have got if I just ordered the motor and inverter together. So this is a win-win-win situation, I think. I need to think that today. I'll tell you better how much I think of it as a win situation in a month or two. So it's out. These are just whole cables hanging down. They're not doing anything. So the thing is completely out and free, and yeah, ready to move on and get the rest of the hoses out. I'd like to get this whole engine bay completely stripped of as much valuable, useful stuff as I possibly can. I may even take out, I haven't decided yet whether or not I'm going to use the drivetrain or the transmission. If I don't use the transmission, I could probably sell it on, but if I did, I would need to take the half shafts or the drive shafts out of the car and send them with the transmission, because I know there's differences in them. So, but that's not an issue. Although I can see this one looks like there's been a leaky seal on it somewhere, but not worried about that. Good, excellent, making progress, albeit slowly. So as you can see, I now have the inverter and motor and transmission all separated from each other. I'm going to take the transmission off the subframe and bolt the subframe back in again so that I can move the car around. Possibly I might eventually, when I have the car out of the garage and sitting waiting to be collected by the scrap man, I might remove the subframe. You never know, that might come in handy for me. Also, I need to get drive shafts out of it because they are definitely going to be handy for me or for someone using this transmission. And I think I said earlier, oh by the way, just in case you're wondering, as I nearly fall over, I'm using a new phone. I bought myself a new Motorola One Zoom phone from Amazon, so that's what I'm recording this on. So if it sounds stupid or sounds terrible or sounds brilliant or none of the above, that's the reason for the change. The previous video was taken using a camcorder. In the last time I was on, I said that this was the charger, I think. I've since learned that I believe this is the DC to DC converter, which will basically take the 300 and whatever volts it is from a Nissan Leaf and convert it down to 12 volts for the battery that used to sit somewhere about here. So that's, I believe that's what that's for. I'll put a link to a video from a chap who basically explains all of the different components and all of the different modules and submodules and whatever in a video that he put up on YouTube, which is excellent, excellent video, well worth watching if you're interested in this. So I'll put that up. But for now, I'm going to start. Like I say, I'm going to separate this transmission from the subframe, get the subframe back in again, and just carry on stripping this down. I'm in no hurry whatsoever, but I want to get it done sometime, so I might as well just get on with it. So anyway, that's the fun where we are at the moment, and I'll update more when I get a bit more done. Well, as you can probably see from the pictures here, we've reached another milestone in the strip down of this car. It's a pretty early milestone. Yeah, I think it's probably the easy bit of this whole project. But as you can see, everything out of here is gone. The only thing I haven't taken out are the drive shafts, and I'll wait until the car's back on its wheels again to do that. I have put the subframe back in again and got it hooked up to the wheel hubs, and I have the steering rack reconnected, although it's actually not connected to the steering column because the steering lock is on. So what I'll do with this is I'll just kick the wheels around. Both wheels will turn together when they're turned, but it's just going to be a matter of getting it onto its wheels and rolling it around and just kicking the wheel to get it to turn the corners. What we've got here is the transmission, which may or may not need to be stripped down to get the shaft or the socket that the drive shaft and the motor goes into. That little thing there, we may need to get that out of there, I'm not sure. I've ordered a clutch friction disc, which I'm told will fit the hub motor of this. If it doesn't fit, it'll have to be returned. So that's what this is. This is the transmission. This is the, I think I said earlier that it was the charger. This is not the charger. This is the DC to DC converter, which is in the top half, and the bottom half, if the front plate was taken off, is a load of relays. This is the probably the charge controller, maybe you would call it, because the charging cables come in the front. Charging wires plug in the front, and the relays then control the voltage going through to the back of the car, which is where the charger was. I must admit I wondered why there was cooling pipes going to the back of the car, and it turns out they were going into the charger. So that's what that is. It was just behind the back seats in the car. Charger, motor, which you've seen before. Those are the splines I was talking about, that I believe I have a friction plate coming that'll match those, and I can then make up a coupler to go from the motor to the transmission of the car this is going to go into. At least that's the plan. And then last but not least, the inverter. So basically that is the big items that make up a Nissan Leaf, apart from the battery of course, and the BMS and all of the bits associated with it, but that's those are the main components. And yes, it was a complete bollock of a job getting this out of the boot. I'll show you where I got it out of. There, those components, the charger and capacitor box sitting there, were in this back part. So that's the strip down of the electrical components more or less done. I'm going to try and take out the rest of the wiring harness and get it out as intact as I can. You never know. I might actually try to run this thing. I'm even taking out the center console and planning to take out the steering, what do you call it, binnacle, instrument binnacle, speedo and so on. Planning to take all of that stuff out, because if I decide to go down the road of transplanting the entire Nissan Leaf into a different car, then having all the parts, all the components intact would make that much easier. But that's not the plan. The plan is to use the inverter to drive the motor, to drive the spindle, to drive the transmission of the car it's going into, and if at all possible, use the charger to charge the battery, and the DC to DC converter to charge to keep the 12-volt battery charged. And if that all happens, then this will be obsolete. So that's the plan. Watch this space. You might have to watch it for a long time to see anything happening, but hopefully we'll get there. Hopefully we'll get something running anyway. So anyway, that's where we are for now. After this, like I said, the only other thing to do is to remove the drive shaft, which will probably be useful to someone, if not me, and the wiring loom. Not a simple task. Bye for now.